All right, welcome folks. I see people are starting to log in and join. So welcome to our Ask Mayfield Anything series. This is a webinar series that we do at Mayfield Renewables. Bring in folks from around the industry and talk about some topics that are top of mind for us and for the industry at large. And so really appreciate you taking your hour here to spend with us. And as we get going, one of the things I always like to point out is very much encourage questions. We'd love to see input from people. Just, big part of this is asking the questions and engaging with you. So all of our panelists are, here ready, willing to answer questions as they go along. What we do ask is that you put those into the Q&A section of the webinar here. So it really helps us track those questions. If you put them in the chat, it's just really easy for them to get lost. So questions into the Q&A section, that makes it easier for us to answer those. So very much, looking forward to engaging with everybody. So with that, I want to introduce myself. My name is Ryan Mayfield. If I haven't met you before, founder of Mayfield Renewables. And, Mayfield Renewables, we are a engineering firm. We do a project and consulting engineering, and then we also do a lot of training. So a lot of education, like what we're doing here today, is a big part of who we are, what we do. And it's been something I've been doing. I've been training at various conferences. The NABCEP conference, probably one of the most notable that I've been doing trainings for throughout my career, and just something that I really enjoy doing. So getting information out to the industry, this is one of those ways that we do it through this AMA series. We have our code corners where I spend time talking about different code sections. We have a newer series dispatches we're doing with our partner outfit. So we are, trying to reach out to and engage with the industry as much as possible. So appreciate you all being here. As we get going, as I introduce this topic, and I'll introduce our guests here in just a moment, I just wanted to take a moment. This hour that we're about to do now is kind of a preview into something we're doing at our first ever education summit. So coming up in October, early October in Austin, Texas, we're going to have our first education summit, and we're going to do an event on October 2nd. We're going to have an evening event, The Great Transformation, and this is going to be the panel that we're going to be talking live. And so a lot of these topics it's a preview of what we're going to be getting into. But as far as the education summit itself goes, we're going to be doing a full day of training sessions, and we're going to get into PV and storage topics, microgrids, O&M topics, and all of these will be, Mayfield Renewables folks, myself, and a lot of our staff are going to be delivering these classes, as well as we have some experts from other organizations that are coming in to help support that. So would really love to see folks there, and hopefully we can get you to join us. We have networking opportunities on both the 2nd and the 3rd. So you see a list here of a lot of the partners that we're going to have and people that will be in the building. So different manufacturers, as well as folks that are on the panel here today to talk about other education opportunities and how they might relate to you and your business. So a lot of professional development. We'll have CEUs through NABCEP for our classes. And so, yeah, really excited about this. This is a great event that my team's been working really, really hard on, and excited to see come to fruition. So hopefully we'll see you in early October. So with that, I want to take a moment, and we'll go through and introduce our guests. And today we're talking around the education, how we're going to growing the workforce and development of our industry. And so we brought some expert guests that are working hard in this field. So we'll go through and we'll introduce everybody, just kind of get a little bit of background, understand their perspective. And so we'll start with Laura Jean, LJ, for us non-French Canadians, and working now at HeatSpring. But LJ, you've had a long career in the industry, and I know that this is nothing new for you. So I'd love to have you introduce yourself and kind of where your perspective is on the topic.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ryan. It's great to be here amongst old friends and new, certainly. Speaking of longevity in the industry, I know you and I have been collaborating for going on 14 years now. So yeah, time flies. So as Ryan said, I'm here today representing HeatSpring. We are a mission-driven organization who provides workforce solutions for climate action, including online training aligned with industry standards and credentials like NAPSEP, which Sean Martin will be talking about later. So my role with HeatSpring is focused on workforce partnerships, which means I assemble teams of really smart people to develop and scale programs that address tough workforce challenges like the lack of solar knowledge on the part of code officials or the need to incubate more home performance companies. The common thread here is really providing the support that employers, like some of the folks on the meeting today, and workers and communities need to succeed in business and advance in a career in solar, which is why I'm so pleased to be here with all of you today and look forward to hearing your experiences. So I will pass things to my colleague, Sean O'Brien. Apologies for the misstatement. Passing the baton to you.
We got Sean. Sean's traveling too. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're
And
good.
folks, sorry you're not able to see me. As Ryan just said, I'm traveling and stuck without a working computer right now. So my apologies. So this is via my phone. So hope everyone can hear me okay. Uh, so Sean O'Brien, President and CEO of NAPSEP. I've been in the solar industry for about 8 years, so not quite as long as most people on this call, but I have been in the licensure and certification industry for over 30 years. And so that is what NAPSEP brings to the table. NAPSEP has an offering of certifications and credentials for most roles in the industry. And the goal for that is to bring quality assurance, safety to all the various jobs and to help individuals, both the young folks coming out of school and those with jobs transition, that the industry is no longer just a placeholder job, that there is a great opportunities for long-term careers and to develop those careers into a lifelong work. So I'll be speaking a little later on that and what NAPSEP brings to the table to help with in those areas. And then I would like to pass it off to Brian.
Great. Thanks a lot, Sean. So I'm Brian Korgel. I'm a professor in chemical engineering at the University of Texas at Austin. I've been at UT since 1998, so a little over 25 years. I've been doing research in solar for quite a while now. The first company I started was called the Novolite back in 2001, which was initially a lighting company, but transformed into a solar company in about 2004, and then exited in 2011. DuPont ended up buying it. I'm the director of the Energy Institute at UT Austin. I also direct a solar research center. It's called the Center for Solar Powered Future, SPF 2050. And so I've been director of the Energy Institute for about 3 years and director of my solar research center for almost 14 years. It's a multi-university center, University of Texas at Austin, also Colorado State, Arizona State, and Texas A&M. It's a National Science Foundation Industry University Cooperative Research Center. So it's we get funding from the National Science Foundation, but most of our funding comes from industry partners. We have about 19 industry partners in that center. So I care a lot about the solar industry and have been thinking a lot about the interface between higher ed and solar, and looking forward to saying a few more words about that. So I'll pass it over to Tatiana.
Thank you all for these wonderful intros. I am here as the Executive Director of CleanTech. As indicated, my name is Tatiana Cannon. I also am the founder and co-executive director of a group called the Green Workforce Collaborative, which I'll be sharing more about. I love being with these OG solar folks because I am a newbie in every way. Been in solar for about 5 years through nonprofit work primarily. So not only am I a newbie, I am not a technician nor an expert nor a developer. My focus really lives in the workforce development side of the house and in promoting clean energy solutions anywhere and everywhere that we can throughout Texas and the ERCOT grid specifically. So honored to be here, thrilled to learn alongside the guests, as well as hopefully share some nuggets of wisdom if available. Thanks to Mayfield for the opportunity to talk more.
Wonderful. Thank you all. I appreciate that, taking the moment to introduce yourselves. And yeah, as I mentioned, this is, really a preview for what we're going to be doing in person. And so, a lot of the, we'll be in Austin. So we have some very Texas focused, or some the folks in Texas, helping bring in their perspective as well. So yeah, so let's jump into this and talking, building the next generation in the solar plus storage industry, really looking at, as we are moving forward, one of the, as I already mentioned, one of our big missions at Mayfield Renewables is doing education, working with education providers and doing things like our summit. And so this has been something we've felt ourselves. And I appreciate people answering that poll that we put out there, seeing some great questions, talking about resources, hiring people and things like that. So definitely things we're going to be talking about, giving some of those resources. And, quite honestly, it's a challenge. We are, as an industry, we're challenged in getting these folks. And so that's why we're here to talk about it. And setting the stage a little bit for the folks on the call, I don't think that this is really news to anybody, just watching the growth of our sector, of our industry, and understanding that we are continuously on this upward growth curve and really no end in sight on that, which is great. Some of the barriers that we've already mentioned, or that we're going to be talking about here, this recruitment, this awareness of solar careers. I love what you said, Sean, of this is not just a placeholder job. This is definitely a career, and this is something hits home for me quite well. That point hits home directly. I have a young adult that he's 21 now. He's looking kind of at this, and so trying to find his way and just trying to point out there's these different methods, these different areas. And so yeah, really something that I think as an industry we need to address and be looking at. And then this training, the time and the resources, availability of standardized curricula, methods, these are definitely things that are challenges for us. And especially on that, I'm just going to call out on you, LJ, because I know of your history with IREC, and we have that kind of that point called out with IREC. So for those folks that maybe aren't familiar, would you mind just kind of talking about IREC a little bit? I know it's a somewhat of a former thing for you, but it's still near and dear for all of us.
Sure, no, happy to. I do see some, as I said, old friends on the line. So some folks are aware of the Interstate Renewable Energy Council that works both on the regulatory front, ensuring that state rulemaking is consistent with solar development and growth. They have expanded their technology scope to include a wider range of clean energy technologies, but still have a very firm grounding in the solar industry. And I'm sure a bunch of you will see some of the team members at RE Plus, I guess, in less than a month here. Goodness.
Right.
Also, IREC is very active on the workforce development front, and our solar job census is the source of the data that Ryan is showing here. And the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance that IREC convenes is the source of this data from employers about some of the barriers that we want to find solutions for. Thanks, Ryan. Back to you.
Perfect. Thanks. Yeah, just showing the IREC logo there. I didn't want to breeze past that without acknowledging who they are and what the work that they're doing. So so that's great. So with with this workforce development, kind of some of the key players. So we're wanted to pull this up and talk about, the workers and learners being there in the center of this. And really, the idea here of this conversation is to kind of get into these and touch these, pretty much all of these, employers and industry, how we can work together. But in essence, I mean, part of this is that we're all connected, right? And trying to make sure that we are figuring out how we can support each other. Brian, when you start talking here in a minute, or when you come up on your slide, talking about how higher education and industry can play a better role together, and making sure all of those things are lined up. And then we have, things like the community organizations, Tatiana speaking on those, and NABCEP and folks like those, and then the training providers, Heat Spring and Mayfield being, some of those those training providers. Yeah, I'm not sure if anybody else wanted to speak on this specific, the connection of everybody that we have here together on this slide. So, okay, so I'm just going to move forward. Brian, we're going to be at the University of Texas when we're doing our summit here coming right up. And so for us, it's been a great partnership, a great relationship to build. And it's the theme of our summit being educational fit really well with University of Texas. I know that you all, and you mentioned it, that you're doing some programs there. But I guess, yeah, would you kind of walk us through, talk to us about that role of higher education, industry, and kind of making that connection between the two?
Yeah, happy to. So, I've been a professor since 1998. My research area is nanomaterials chemistry. So my area of expertise is making new materials, different kinds of devices and applications. And I really personally got very involved in the solar industry through the company I'd started at Novolite, and initially looking for talent. So that was an early seed stage company developing a new material for solar cells, and trying to find talent in that area was tough. I mean, essentially, for a company like us based in the United States, we ended up hiring people from all over the world. And for example, one of the leading educational institutions at that time, and still continues to be, is UNSW in Sydney in Australia. And a lot of the technology that actually came out of that university and was adapted in China to make silicon solar cells came out of the lab of like Martin Green and a few other people there. And so that ability to find talent for your company has been something that I've personally experienced. And so as both an educator and someone in industry, recognizing, well, where do you find people who know something about solar cells or passionate about it? The source of those kind of people entering the workforce tend to be students, either from the universities with bachelor's degrees or PhDs or masters, or they might be students coming out of high school, for example. So what I've seen is the power that companies can have in influencing students' careers, where sometimes it might just be a single visit from someone like the CEO of Sonova to UT to give a talk about solar and what the job opportunities are, can influence at least a few students to change career trajectories and go into the solar industry, for example. My center that I run, the Center for Solar Powered Future, is largely funded by industry dollars, which goes into the research, but it funds PhD students, funds some master's students. It also funds undergrads. That's so great. There's a thunderstorm here and the power just went out around me. So I'm sitting in the dark, but hopefully you can still see me.
Yeah.
So So thinking about the industry is bringing funding into the research, but these students then are now doing research in the solar industry. Many of them are not initially thinking they're going to go into the solar industry, but because of those interactions, they do. They find mentors. So, I just, in this little part here, just like to stress how much influence people have from industry in the educational process, influencing more students to get interested in careers in the industry, and also influence curriculum. So I think, anyway, I just can't emphasize it enough. I think sometimes folks in industry don't quite realize how impactful just even small amounts of engagement can be for these students.
Yeah, I mean, when we first talked, when we first had our intro call, and we were starting to put this together, we talked about that, and it was an interesting thing, and it kind of hit home for me. So I live in a university town as well, run a business, and when I thought back on it, I was like, I've hired exactly one person from the university where I live, and they have a stellar electrical engineering program. And so I guess I'm just curious on your input, and you kind of gave some examples of other industries, the oil and gas industry being probably one of the big ones. Obviously they're much more established, probably have a lot more money, but just curious on what you see that engagement looks like. What I guess my question is, how can folks in the solar industry, obviously UT at Austin, very specific to your location, but we all typically have access to some sort of university close by. So what are those activities? What do you suggest people do in order to get more engaged and help encourage those people to be looking for jobs in the solar industry as they come out of universities?
Right. Well, I mean, again, I think it doesn't even take that much engagement to have a pretty large impact. So, for example, like if you're looking for electrical engineering students, as an example, the electrical engineers have, student organizations, student clubs. They're always looking for external speakers, for example. So sometimes it's just a matter of calling up the department chair and saying, hey, I would love to, give back a little bit, come in and talk to some students, and they can usually hook you up in that way. There are other more direct ways to do it, or with more engagement, where you might become actually through your company fund a research center there on solar, where you're actually interfacing with some research groups or some faculty, and through that you can get to know a little bit about what their curriculum is like and actually influence it. I've known some alumni who have a little bit of time and will actually go teach a course as a lecturer. So there are very few courses on photovoltaics, on solar cells at the university. There might be a couple. So offering a class like that is one way to do it. The other thing, so through the Energy Institute that I direct, we hold events where we are often reaching out to folks in industry to come and host a table where it's like a mentorship table, things like that, and just talk to students. And I think like finding some faculty, if you know a professor or two who does research or teaches in solar cells or in photovoltaics, and maybe get to know them, and just encourage them to keep teaching the students. I had one student, I teach a materials class, and I gave 2 lectures on how solar cells work. And this was a chemical engineering student who now is working for a solar company doing like some solar development. He doesn't feel like he knows a lot about the solar industry. So he called me and he wanted to just talk me through it. What he's doing, and do you think that, did I think it was a good career choice to take this job? And so just having somebody that these students can talk to. So it can be a high level of engagement, an advisory board, a member of a research center, but it doesn't take that much to have a pretty large impact on that university.
Great. Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. And it's one of those, I think, I'll put myself into that camp of like the universities there, like they should just, the people coming out of it should just be there and they're ready to go, right? But it does take a little bit of interaction, especially with a new and growing industry. And it's one that, a lot of students are very interested in. And it's so I think that, getting that interaction is probably a little bit easier than maybe some of the older, more long-standing technologies.
Yeah, I mean, you serve as a role model. So these students, remember they're I guess you talked, I think it was your son, 21-year-old, 22. They have a very small world of influence around them. It's basically them parents and the parents of their friends, maybe the friends of their parents, perhaps, and that is like the only world that they know. And so I think, and then when they're at the university, they kind of only see what their professors sort of do, which also is a very small microcosm. So being available to do that mentoring and provide a role model to these students can really inspire the students in ways that are fairly profound.
Perfect. I think that's a great segue too into you, Tatiana. So I think, a lot of what we just talked about there, I would say translates into, this workforce collaborative and trying to work with getting people into the industry and making that connection, the employers and the employees, whether it be graduates of university or not, high school graduates or, people looking to be in the trades. So yeah, I would love to hear a little bit more, Tatiana, what CleanTech is doing and kind of what that collaboration looks like and how you're trying to fulfill that and connect those dots.
Absolutely. I have a frog in my throat. I have to apologize. Of course, it showed up like 2 minutes ago, so I apologize for any throat clearing. So I would be remiss if I didn't say that everything that Brian just said, I just want to give like +7s to. I started my career in higher education, specifically in student affairs. So those people who aren't professors, but are like influencing students in different ways. And first of all, the level of influence that is available to these very fresh minds that, again, as Brian mentioned, have a limited worldview of what careers are even available. It's really a great thing if you ever feel like picking up the phone. There's always someone on the other end of those specific student organization groups, like female engineers, or, think of any niche group that you could find in a college campus near you. And there's so many students eager to learn. And solar is such a wonderful growing career opportunity that many likely haven't heard of. So those university interventions, I cannot say enough about. It's actually a lot of the work that I've done in the past in the community is through university support. So putting more of my present day hat on, I come to the table having led Solar Austin as its inaugural executive director for a few years. And our primary program there was the Pathways to Clean Energy Careers program. So working with local colleges and universities to place students in internships. So as you all may recall, 2021, 2022, arguably to present, the solar industry is going through changes. So we had a lot of our partner companies locally in Texas that were like, we just don't have the head count for an intern right now. We're doing layoffs or we have hiring freezes. Like, this is just not the thing. But we need more installers, literally always. So with that, we launched a bit of an offshoot through Solar Austin, focused really on trades training, but still with our internships in mind. So enter me, executive director of Solar Austin, applying for grants to fund this work, really working to build these partnerships locally, and realizing that we had limited scope and impact. So I grabbed a few of my friends that represent other nonprofits, city organizations, groups like that, small businesses that are willing to basically serve as HR as a service. So they work with a variety of different groups, whether that's college students, youth, all the way up to like recidivism efforts. So second chance employment, working with our unhoused population in Austin and training them to do good jobs and have living wages. So that's where the Green Workforce Collaborative was born. I whispered the idea to some friends and they bought into it. And so now we're about 18 months down the road, and we recently received a federal grant for $2.2 million to expand the model and see how it works. So all of that is to say, I would never read a slide to you, but really what I put on the slide here is the spirit of it is that the solar industry needs bodies. I feel like we're all at that. Here's our basement. We understand the trajectory of this industry and we understand the workforce demand that creates. There are bodies to fill that workforce demand, but to so many of the things that Brian said, it's not, you don't wake up at 14 and be like, I want to work in solar, unless you happen to know someone in solar. So we work really closely at Clean Techs and through the Green Workforce Collaborative to really just ring that alarm bell. And there are so many trade skills that really translate. So think of someone who might have a parent that works in construction or electrical. It's such an easy jump to say, do you know about solar? And I think, lest I show my millennial age, I'm just so fascinated by Gen Z generally and their tech adaptability. You can put anything in front of a internet connected young person and they can derive solutions. And so we really work to connect those gaps as soon as we can. We do a lot of interventions with STEM education, including like solar cars that you just take to like a Girl Scout troop and let them play around with and understand what solar is. And we really try to find more equitable pathways for all sorts of groups to find their way into the solar industry and earn a living wage, find a great career, again, in an industry that's only growing. So I come to you with that. I'm really here also for any questions that people might have to answer, but I love where I'm couched in terms of these remarks. Given my experience, the only other thing I will leave you all with is that it takes a village to move an industry forward. And something I said on one of our prep calls was that I kind of look at the solar industry as a teenager, like not fully in its own skin yet, still kind of growing. And that means that there's so much ahead where we can really strategically, as an industry and as a collective, literally influence higher education, training programs, access to those training programs, community engagement with access to training. So field is ripe and it takes a village. So I am thrilled to, again, answer any questions that people might have and share what's happening in Texas, because really our big goal is to replicate things like the Green Workforce Collaborative anywhere and everywhere that we can to get the talent into green careers.
Well, I have one that I think, we talked about it a little bit. And so, obviously you being Texas-based, this, for folks, if you are in the region, you'd be able to, reach out and work with Clean Techs. I guess the question would be, where do we find, as employers, where do we find my regional, like, I guess specifically, we hire people across the country as well. So we're not so regional, but a lot of places are going to be regional. And so I guess the question is, what's the best way to engage and find people to work with like yourself in their own regions?
Yeah, I think that in addition to universities, there are tons of trade schools, even high schools that have continuing technical education where, again, guest speaker, just show up somewhere. When I think about the workforce demand, I really do think of it in terms of the funnel that is growing. Excuse me. So I actually do, if you have access to a high school that does continuing technical education of anything that looks, smells like solar, I would encourage you to reach out to those programs as a company and engage, both for potential hires straight out of high school, but also as they persist through college, university, et cetera. That other thing I will say is nonprofits like mine exist all over the country, and often, and they look differently in everywhere. But often they have some pulse on who has things in motion already, so that you're not starting from ground zero. So that's the best advice I would say too, is even just Google,
Sure.
renewable energy nonprofit near me and see what comes up. And don't be afraid to look at their website, see who they partner with, but also look at their programs. They might be doing something very similar. Workforce development for, I assume most know, is just the hotness in terms of what the federal government is funding right now. So there's lots of organizations that are doing this all over the country in varying pockets and sizes and with specific interests. So I will always encourage a great little Google search or a quick AI prompt for what's closest to you. And that way you don't have to start from scratch.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. So, and I think, that gets us moving well into LJ, into your, topic here, kind of talking about training and online learning. And so right there with you finding the employees, how do we, getting them trained and getting them developing that training and retaining people, I think is a big part of this. And I know HeatSpring, you'll talk about it, but and HeatSpring does a lot of online training, working with companies specifically. And, full disclosure, Mayfield and HeatSpring, we also work together. HeatSpring hosts some of our courses and things like that. So yeah, I guess, can you talk to us a little bit about, that development, the training, and the online learning aspect for these employees?
Absolutely. Thanks, Ryan. And just really want to echo everything Tatiana said. It does take a village, and that's what we were trying to show earlier with the graphic, with all the squiggles. Just there's a lot of us that need to be speaking with each other and communicating effectively to make this work. So, and I really love how Ryan and the Mayfield team assembled this group today, because we are kind of, in a way, kind of demonstrating the microcosm here, right? So you have different aspects of the industry that are speaking to you about some strategies that we hope will help you recruit and retain great talent. So yeah, so HeatSpring's role in this whole piece of the puzzle, right? It's a big puzzle and a big village. So we've been around for a while, since 2007. Historically, we're more known for our solar storage and related training. So this crew we're on with today is definitely our people. We've always been aligned with national standards like NABCEP, but we are now also expanding to other clean energy technologies to further support things like building electrification and home performance, because it's really a spectrum, right? We don't want to have the energy efficiency without the renewables and the other way around. So why does this all matter, right? So I'm guessing a lot of you are here today because we face an absolutely unprecedented scaling of the industry, as Ryan earlier illustrated. This means we need to rapidly grow our workforce in an environment where employers are already telling us that one of your top challenges is attracting and retaining talent. And we need more skilled workers, and we need them fast. So online training definitely plays a key role in providing on-demand, technically accurate content that's developed with, subject matter expert input, expert validation to a broad audience at scale. Certainly in certain circumstances and for certain types of learners, it could be the sole solution they need. But more likely, and especially in the case of onboarding new or transitioning workers, online training is really more effective as one element of a comprehensive training program that includes things like mentorship and hands-on or experiential learning. So this is the model we see working best when collaborating with an entity like Tatiana's in Texas, or other community-based organizations around the country, where our training partner is also providing wraparound services and support and opportunities to participate in group learning activities. And so that's a high touch transaction, right, guys? And it's not a transaction, it's a relationship. And so there's a lot of space there for you to plug yourself into this equation and this relationship. So just kind of planting the seeds there. Happy to discuss that further in the Q&A. And then finally, just as a little bonus here, I think Heat Springs a pretty neat place. That's why I work with Brian and the team. I do think they're uniquely positioned to help industry scale clean energy skills. But we're not the only show in town. There's some folks on with us who also do online training. So I put some quick notes on the hallmarks of quality online training on this slide, but feel free to reach out to me directly for a more comprehensive list to vet these types of opportunity for your talent development needs. Thanks everyone for your time and attention, and look forward to hearing more about what you're up to and your questions for this panel. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Ryan.
Yeah, so appreciate that. And we do have a slide coming up with some resources, just, we did some brainstorming and came up with a list of those organizations. Like LJ said, there's plenty out there. I say plenty. There are options out there. We probably always will be needing some more with the way the industry is growing and just being able to meet people where they're at. And so, yeah, one of the things, that I think with HeatSpring, and I think is really interesting, and I appreciate, what you're trying to do, reaching out with the employers and working with employers specifically, and trying to do kind of these like approaching the team as a whole, not doing it one by one, but understanding that as employers, we are looking to make sure our team is learning, and it's not just individuals, but everybody's learning, and we're learning similar things and be able to foster communication internally. And I think that's a really big thing. So internally, we do some stuff at Mayfield to do that, our own internal lunch and learns and things like that. But, what you're doing, LJ, with that, I think is an important aspect and really helps the team as a whole communicate more and elevate their knowledge more.
Yeah, definitely. And we're always looking for opportunities. You mentioned learning pathways, Ryan, and Brick Meyer, who is also on the line here today from HeatSpring, is working with Brian and the team on, ways that we can present learning pathways more intuitively for folks. And, we do everyone has their unique training needs. There's always going to be dealer or installer specific information or procedures that you need to transmit to new workers, but we definitely have universal stuff that people need to know. And there's certain things that we see coming up again and again, and we're just trying to package that more neatly for folks and make it more intuitive to kind of navigate through, adding skills in a logical career pathway.
Perfect. So I think you guys are helping me out a lot here on these transitions. So, the career pathway and that kind of making that logical jump for people. So Sean, you mentioned very early, and I've heard you say it before, but I really like it how, this is a legitimate career for people. The solar industry is not just the job that you do until you find something better kind of thing. If you could kind of talk through, I think most people on our call are going to be familiar with NABCEP if you want to give the high level on that, but then just kind of, talking through the credentialing and kind of what NABCEP is doing in order to kind of help promote this and make that connection between employers and employees as well.
Sure thing. Excuse me, Ryan. Yeah, you're right. Most everyone on this call probably knows NABCEP is the certification body for the solar industry. But many, if not all, of the people on this call may not know what NABCEP does to connect installers and other professionals to jobs and to provide access to continuous learning. So people don't know, they can go right to our website. And NABCEP has a very robust professional directory that lists all of our certificates. You're talking tens of thousands of folks in their specialty areas. You can filter that by, a zip code or a city and get someone within 5 miles of that zip code or city And as I said, various specialty areas if you're looking for someone. And for instance, if you're looking for a designer or an inspector or someone to commission a system, you can go on there, filter through that, and find several folks in your area that can do that work if you're looking for someone to do that. And then someone who's not becomes NAPSAP certified can use that and reverse engineering of that and have themselves up there and be able to promote themselves there and also on our job board. So it works both ways, helps an employer find someone in just a general installer or someone who specializes in one of these areas you see here on this career wheel. It also helps folks to find work as well. So that's kind of how we're connecting installers and other professionals to employers and vice versa. As far as continuing education and learning, we have a large, probably hundreds, if not thousands, of training courses on our online course catalog. Uh, that includes courses being offered through community colleges, universities, private training companies like Mayfield and Heat Spring, and so many more. As well as the Cooperatives Union and the IBEW. So there's a variety of places that people can find courses either for continuing education or training, when they're first getting into the industry and they're trying to find some entry-level trainings as well. On top of that, all of that, access to all of that is free, doesn't cost anything. There's no membership for someone to be able to find, courses and things of that nature. Some of the trainings on there are offered by those providers free of charge. Most of them are for a fee, and that varies depending on the provider. The other piece is that we tried to get continuing education out there. Best practices is NAPSEP's annual continuing education conference. And I was thinking about this presentation. This is the first time it actually occurred to me that with that registration, what I realized is that someone pays $600, maybe $625 to come to our conference. And our conference is a little different than others in the industry where that includes all meals, food and beverage for 4 days. That $600 basically covers that cost. So during our 4-day conference, we have now 84 technical training sessions. So when someone registers for that conference, they're getting access to 84 technical, some of the best. I mean, one thing that NAPSEP is always continuously being praised for is the quality of training at the NAPSEP conference. And I realized that unlike other conferences in the industry where you can get a free show pass and get on the show floor for free, but then you have to pay $75 for this training or $150 for that training. All of NAPSEP's training is free. And speaking with my board recently, one of the things we're hearing from people that we survey and talk to on a daily basis is getting so expensive to pay for training. And training since the COVID have gone up so much. Now we haven't gone through and talked to providers to sort of see if the data backs that up. But we were talking about how can we get free training, as much free training out to people as possible so that they're getting access to not only manufacturers trainings, but all the technical side as well, so that they're doing best practice in whatever area of the industry they cover.
Yeah, and I was just going to jump in, and that's an interesting one because I think everybody on the call very much values education, and I think the participants here joining us today probably do as well. And it's not a to put it together, to put well defined and well delivered training. It's not easy. It's not cheap by any means. So I think that's one of the things that is definitely a challenge within the industry of being able to make it accessible and make it so that folks can get that access. And so, I definitely have appreciated what NAPSEP's done with the conference and, with the online stuff you've done as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it is one of the, I mean, it's one of the main things we hear from folks is that, they're just looking to be able to find trainings that are valued and NAPSEP can't promote one training provider over another. It's just not fair to do that.
Oh, sure.
So we are working on, we'll initially do it, and it should be coming out in the next few months with our PV associate, as you see in the center of that career wheel, where we will be putting out some statistics or providing at least to the providers. We won't put it out. We'll give it to, let's say, HeatSpring has a PV associate training class. We will give them their scores on each of those content areas for that test, as well as the overall total score for their students, as well as their pass rate for their students. Again, it'll be private to that whatever training provider it is, but then they'll also get national stats. And we'll do this a couple of times, three to four times a year, where they'll be able to compare how their students are doing to everyone else who took the PV associate test and after training. The goal for that is particularly giving them the breakdown by each of the content areas or the knowledge areas on the test, for each of the training providers to look at their training to say, our students in this area are getting 35% of the questions right. Nationally, everyone else is getting 55 or 60% of the questions right. We need to relook at how we're training in this area. So the goal of doing that is not to say one is better than the other. It's more about how do we improve our training based on how the performance is on the examination. And it's important for the PV associate because that's the only one credential NAPSEP has that doesn't have an experience requirement. So that makes it important for that because that's really, most people just take one course, their PV associate training, and then move on to the examination. So the relationship between what that training contains and not only the quality of the content, but the quality of the delivery of that training is very important and has a direct relationship a lot of times to how the students perform on that credentialing examination.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's great that you guys are tracking that and be able to identify those. The important aspect of making sure people are learning what they need to learn and retaining that. So that's great.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the most common question we get is why should I get certified? And kind of gets under my skin a little bit. It shouldn't. I've been in this industry for a long time, and whatever industry, certification industry, and with any type of industry I've worked with, as far as mental health counseling, solar, a variety of others, coaching, it's always the same question by folks. Why should I get certified? And I'm always keep it to myself, but I'll say it here. I always say why do you want to seek out a doctor that's a certified cardiologist, or you want to make sure your accountant's a certified public accountant? I mean, so it's the same question. Simple answer is, and I tell people, is to make sure someone's verifying that what you're doing, you're not going to hurt yourself, you're not going to hurt someone else. So safe and effective practice, that third-party verification that someone is practicing in a safe and effective way. For an employer, it's about protecting their business, their reputation, and in some ways getting more customers. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But then for asset owners, it's basically about, we've talked to finance companies and things of that nature, and they want to be able to, protect their investment. And they've seen that if a system is installed or there's NAPSEP certified folks working on it, there's tendency to be less need for maintenance on it and things of that nature, and the system just works better. So the certification has a very important role. And another frustrating point for me is you'll see manufacturers say, come take this hour-long training, you'll be certified. And they're misleading the public a little bit, which can get very dangerous in some areas, because yes, they may be certified in how to use a particular product that manufacturer makes, but they're not certified in a general way, because most certification programs, proper certification programs, include that education/training piece, the experience piece, the examination, which needs to be rigorous, the need to adhere to a code of ethics, and not just a code of ethics. Like, it has to be an enforceable code of ethics where someone is held accountable. And then, as I spoke earlier, the continuing education requirement, where the certification is only good, let's say with NAPCEP, 3 years, and you have to get those continuing education hours, 30, 40, whatever the case may be. So there's a big difference in that, and it's kind of like the public and employers need to know that someone saying, I'm certified, well, what does that mean? What are you certified in? So NAPCEP does a lot of public relations stuff and PSAs to educate consumers and employers that you need to make sure what that certification means. Our certifications, we follow the ISO, ANSI 17024, Standard for Professional Certification, which means NAPCEP is also evaluated, and we have to make sure we're developing our certifications and maintaining our certifications to a certain best practices and standards.
Yeah, and that's it. And that's I know it's been an uphill battle. I know it's been something that NAPCEP has been having to, I guess, to your own horn, or just be putting that out there so people understand what that really means, because it's I remember when NAPCEP first got started, and definitely something that people probably still need to be reminded of. There's a good question that came in along the way, and so I think this is probably can be applied to the group as a whole, but are these efforts focusing on field jobs only, or are there plans for training for office roles, design, modeling, operations, and such as analytics? And so, specific to what we have up on the screen here, there's definitely, there's the installation professional, which is really focused on the field work, but there is an effort. I know that we have an effort because we're very much, we do a lot of design engineering, and so doing a lot of training on those office folks. There's the sales certification specific to NAPCEP. But yeah, if others have other comments on kind of what that looks like for those trainings, because historically it has been looking at just the people in the field, and as this is a whole industry, as this is a career, there's definitely a lot more to it that people can be applying this for.
Yeah, and Brian, I can speak to what NAPCEP has found. The PV associate credential, originally was that entry level to move up to a technical type job. What we found is a fairly decent size or percentage of folks taking that training and the examination of folks working in the office of installation companies and other types of companies in the industry, because those admin folks want to be able to speak the language and talk to crews and things.
Right.
And they found that training has helped them to be part of the industry and be able to speak the language, so to say.
Exactly. So we're running up against the top of the hour here, and there was another question that came in from Gene asking, and so I'll make sure that Gene and Sean, you're connected on certification around supply chain issues and things like that. So kind of make sure. And there was one early.
Yes, I'm working with the Association for Supply Chain Management, Gene. Spoke to them a couple of weeks ago, so I would love to speak with you about that.
Okay, great. And then James asked a question early on, and sorry, James, I wanted to bring this up, and it was around when Brian was talking about universities working on aspects involving the smart grid in general, and then some very specific stuff around blockchain. I see, LJ, you gave some examples. I would also recommend looking at, locally, I know about, we've hired folks from Oregon Institute of Technology. They have a engineering program around renewables there. So those are some of the resources along with what LJ put in there. And Brian, I don't know if you have other direct resources that you would point people to in the smart grid area.
Yeah. I mean, University of Texas at Austin does quite a bit of smart grid research with the Center for Electromechanics, which has a long history of that, and several faculty in the electrical engineering department. Blockchain is a big topic. Just data as it connects to renewable energy is a really big topic right now for at least at UT Austin. I know Texas A&M has quite a bit of smart grid type stuff as well. So a lot of resources there in Texas at the universities.
Great. So yeah, so James, if you have other questions, you can reach out to some of us directly. Might be able to get you some contacts. As I mentioned early, we do have some resources. Put this on the screen. We will have this presentation available. So if any of these slides you need to go look at again, but this was just a brainstorm around what some of these other entities are. So Mayfield Renewables, as we mentioned, we work with organizations, manufacturers, and EPCs directly to do training around different topics. So that's something that we do. SEI is another good one. Amicus is a great organization out there. I know that they've recently done some work around the O&M training in workforce development. So those are just some folks. And then I'm not going to read through the entire list for you because we're starting to run out of time, but definitely some great programs and some great partners out there that I would recommend people take a look at and reach out to for resources and some training issues. As happens a lot of times in our presentations, we're at the end of the hour and we're just getting to our key takeaways. So I'm going to breeze through this pretty quick just to make sure that we can get everybody's contact info up as well. But I think one of the big things is seeking the opportunities, reaching out to community organizations, higher ed. There's a lot of opportunities for us as an industry to be getting out there and being a little bit more active, being proactive in reaching out to these people, participating in mentorship, apprenticeship programs, things like that. So these are all great things that we talked about that highly encourage people to do. I know I'm going to be taking it to heart, thinking about my own ability to work with some of the local folks at the university, for example. So appreciate everybody's time on coming on. So to the panelists, I just wanted we have your contact information here. I want to make sure that people in the audience have access to this. If you wanted to reach out to anybody, please do. I'll speak up for myself. You can always reach out to us at Mayfield with any questions or any comments or anything like that. But if you have something specific for our panelists, we have their contact info here as well. So thank you very much. All the panelists give you an opportunity to just, thank you for your time. Thank you for engaging with everybody. And I think it's been a really good conversation. All of us, again, this was pretty much a preview for the live event we're going to be doing. So highly encourage you to join us in Austin, October 2nd. We'll be speaking in the evening, and then we'll be sticking around to mingle with folks and do some just chatting and checking with everybody. So highly encourage you to look at joining us in Austin. And then finally, next month, pretty excited about this. We're going to be at RE Plus, Mayfield will be, and we're going to be joined with Chris and Kate on the show floor. Actually, we're going to be doing a live AMA. So encourage people, if you're at the conference, to show up. And it's Thursday morning at 9:30. It'll be at the Power Up Live podcast stage. So we'll have the ability to have some people in the audience, and we're going to be, the three of us will be talking about our impressions, kind of our top picks for what we saw at RE Plus, and then are going to convince our #1 solutions provider to join us on stage. So would love to see you all there at RE Plus, or you'll be able to tune in live as well if you're not at the event. Okay. So with that, thank you to the panelists again. I really appreciate it. LJ, Brian, Tatiana, and Sean, it's been great to have you on. And for those of you out in the audience, please reach out and let us know if you have any questions. Great. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Ryan.